Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Georgiana.
And this is Wholehearted Loving, where we teach you simple tools for self-love and compassion to grow the muscles you need to be with big feelings, triggers, and overwhelming sensations in your body.
Whether you have active challenges in your life or relationships, or whether you're just here to learn to be kinder to yourself, we pull out all the little things that make life feel better, the things that give you a sense of hope and direction.
So if you're too hard on yourself or on others,
if you want to feel real, deep connection in your life and relationships,
even if you want to reprogram your inner critic while you're sleeping,
this is a great place to be.
So welcome, and we hope this episode brings you just the tidbit you needed today.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgiana.
Today, we're going to give you some practices that are a continuation from our last couple of episodes where we've talked about gifts and burdens, what we perceive as burdens specifically we talked about last week, and how to share the impacts of those or when to not share them. And today we're going to give you practices you can use before going into those kinds of conversations, while you're in the middle of those conversations, and then afterwards for grounding and self-connection. You can find self-reflection prompts for this episode and every episode on our Instagram at Wholehearted Loving. And if you'd like to learn more about us and how you can practice with us live, you can go to our website, which is wholeheartedloving.com. Before we get started with an episode of practices, we will begin with a practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other and this podcast.
Okay, so I'll walk us through something, and I already described it to Steph before we pressed record just to see if it made sense. And while I'm thinking of this stuff, I realize I know where I learned this from. This is from Leo. Our friend Leo, who's an amazing yoga instructor, amongst other things. But I learned it in his practice, and I thought it was neat. I'm pretty sure I learned it from him. I'll just say we learned it from Leo. So let me attempt to describe it, but I might need your help with word stuff. I think I will need your help. First, we'll just sit, lay, stand. Really doesn't matter what position you're in, but we're going to practice some deep belly breaths. And I'm going to add in, I hated deep belly breaths before. Whenever anyone said, "Oh, we should take deep belly breaths," I was like, "Shut up. I don't want to listen to you. I don't like touching my belly. I don't like the idea that, like, I don't know." I was just opposed. So if you have that same relationship with deep belly breaths, that's okay. Maybe it changes over time. I've begun to really enjoy them. But this is going to give you, I think, a sort of fun way to practice with them. So we want to be able to have room to access your belly, specifically around your belly button. And you'll need your two hands free for this. And then I think I'm going to need your help, Steph, to describe what we're doing with the hands.
Okay. We're going to make two V's with our first two fingers of both hands. Peace signs. Yeah.
Okay.
And you're going to connect the tips of the fingers. So both your index fingers and your swear fingers are connected. So now instead of two V's, you have one diamond.
Yes. Like a long, wide diamond, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. And we're going to place your hands with these fingers touching like that right around your belly button. So there'd be like a diamond and your belly button is in the middle.
Yeah.
And you're going to rest your hands gently on your belly here, where you can feel the fingertips of your two index fingers gently touching and your two middle fingers gently touching. As we inhale and expand into the belly, you're going to naturally will happen, your fingers are going to come apart from each other. And then as you exhale and your belly contracts, they're going to touch again. Isn't that neat? And we're just going to do that a couple times. Inhaling deep into the belly. You're going to make those fingers come apart. Exhaling, contracting. The fingers will say hello to each other again. I get a lot of joy in the moments when they come back together. And I think there was a time when it felt sort of hard to get the fingers to come apart, or they only came apart a tiny little bit. So if that's the case, let that be okay.
I like this.
Yeah, what do you like about it?
I love breath work, and I love added tidbits that keep me out of my head or occupy my head in just the right way to stop me from wandering off in thought. So the sensation of the fingers and the intention with the fingers really helps me stay focused.
Mm-hmm. I actually find I have always found meditation very difficult and breath work sort of challenging. And what I discovered is I need to add in touch and movement. And when I pair breath with movement or touch, all of a sudden I'm in. Like it works. Like I'm connected in a way that I can't connect without that kinesthetic sensory input. And so for anyone of you, if you have struggled with meditation or breath work, see if adding in some touch or some movement paired with breath helps you. Because it really makes a difference for me. Because it's exactly what you say, gives my brain just enough to focus on to take it away from other thoughts.
Yeah, nice.
And it keeps me interested.
Yeah.
I need to be interested.
Yeah, for sure. Engaged. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The last couple episodes we talked about gifts and burdens that we've received from other people or been on the receiving end of or taken, like the way you might take offense when none was intended to be given. And I thought it would be helpful for people to hear how we might go into these conversations and maintain self-connection, connection with our intentions, connection with our bodies, self-regulation while these kinds of conversations are happening. Because in the past, I would have gone into this kind of conversation with an intention for what I wanted to say, which may or may not come true in the moment when I open my mouth, right? Probably with a whole bunch of judgments and demands and requests and all of this energy and thought processes that really wouldn't have contributed much of helpfulness to the conversation. And the sorts of activities I would engage in now, mentally and physically, in preparation for a conversation that might pose challenges or that might dysregulate my system, for example. The thoughts going into that will be different. The actions going into that will be different. And the self-connection during will be different. And then the debriefing, like the internal and the literal outward, possibly with other loved ones, debriefing afterwards will have a whole bunch of different content than it would have before. And I would love to walk through that with you and see how you might approach this kind of thing.
Nice. I'm happy to. When you asked me this question, I felt excited because I thought, okay, yeah, I can answer those questions. I can tell you how I would prepare myself before and connect with myself during and provide aftercare for myself afterwards. And then I thought how will I show people my exact way of doing things? And then I realized it's not about doing a prescribed set of things. Just like we said in the other episodes, it's not about using prescribed prompts. It's about the essence of the prompt. It's about those elements that are important to get across to someone. So the same applies here. It's not one prescribed practice. It's that I tend to notice what kind of energy I feel like I might be in beforehand. And I notice what might help my body in that time. I tend to notice where my head might go before, during, and after. And then I think of what might be reassuring thoughts that are good and supportive for me to remember. So what I share in terms of how I prepare my body and my mind to have a difficult conversation, or what I do with myself during or after, might not be what you choose to do. It might not be what you choose feels supportive for you, but it's about growing that habit, I guess, and the intention of preparing our bodies and our minds for harder things, whether it's a task or it's a conversation or just something that makes you feel uneasy, right?
Yeah.
How do I prepare before, during, after? When we walk people through things in our group sessions and they say, oh, I need to have this conversation or I need to do this thing at work. We walk people through, well, what helps you prepare? What can help you during? What can help you after? Right? So it's a nice way to just look at how we support ourselves in those different phases of doing hard things.
Yeah. And maybe how we don't support ourselves, and like what's socially acceptable, and what kind of things do you see in like media and movies and TVs? What's the normal social way, And I think that generally involves like distraction, dread, and maybe having a drink, like things that are really are helping you dissociate and avoid, but not really supporting your system and your emotional state.
Yes. One thing that comes to mind immediately when you say that is, for me, talking with people before and after with the either conscious intent or subconsciously just to bitch about it.
Right.
And complain and work myself up in a tizzy. And then depending on the types of friendships you have and how you generally discuss things, it might be friendship dynamics based on, I love you, I care about you, so I'm going to join you in your complaining about this person. And it might be well-intentioned, but it just adds to the dysregulation.
Totally.
So that's definitely something. Of like also this validating that we can get from our friends of like, oh yeah, he did you wrong or she did you wrong, and like, what a jerk, and just gets us all riled up.
Yeah. Which is confusing when that's our natural state, right? When we're just trying to get back to this, what feels like a sort of a homeostasis of what we're accustomed to, which if we're riled up all the time, that's what feels normal and comfortable, right? And that's the energy we're bringing to that conversation, riled up.
Yeah. Yes. And there's a difference between assertiveness, because I definitely had to grow that muscle of being assertive, and being like riled up to the point where I'm really dysregulated and I'm in a place where I just want to be right. I want to make you wrong. And I'm really not curious at all about your experience.
Yeah.
And I think in the past, because of such a people pleaser and I didn't know how to speak up, I would feel like, we talked about fuel in the last episode. I would feel like that's the kind of fuel I would need to feel brave enough to speak up.
Yeah.
Right. When, yes, maybe it would help me speak up, but it would be speaking up from a very different energy and intention than ultimately what I think would be better received and more constructive and more in true alignment with the fact that I want to have a harmonious relationship and connection here.
Yeah. And letting all of that journey be okay, right? Like, there's a point in life where maybe we need a drink to build up the courage. Maybe we need to be coming from a super bitchy, learning how to be assertive kind of a place, because that's part of our journey to learn how to get to a regulated place where we can express ourselves without an emotional charge. So letting all of those stages be okay and connecting with the overall intention and direction.
Yeah. And I think staying present enough to notice and be honest with ourselves of when is it not working anymore, right? When do you not want to rely on using a drink in order to find your courage? When do you, not want to rely on just bringing bitchy energy in order to speak up for yourself, right? When do you want to start learning the discernment and nuance between those energies? And we all have our own time, our own process, and our timing and pacing.
We do. So where are you at now? If you were, I don't know if you want to think of a real life example or if you want this to be more of a theoretical thing, but let's imagine there's some sort of impact that's been uncomfortable for you and you want to address this with somebody.
Well, I go straight back to a time where it was an actual real situation where I felt super worked up and ended up calling you about it. And I think that's a good example in how do we help the body when our mind is racing and it's making it, the situation mean all sorts of things that are not helpful. So I'll use this example where there was a plan, like a date, like a plan thing, right? Where I was under the impression that I was going to be doing something with someone at a certain time. And I made a real effort to be there and reschedule my day so I was like available for this. And then that time came and went. I didn't hear from this person. And it stirred up all my old stuff of I'm not important, I don't matter, I'm easy to forget about. And body-wise, like all I remember feeling, it was like a yucky body feeling all over. And it had a panicked feel to it. I'm sure my heart was beating. I'm sure it was hot. I think I would have felt, I remember feeling this urgency of I got to do something about this. And also this pull of don't do anything. Don't chase after someone. Right? I had an old pattern of chasing after people. So I was like, don't chase. And I remember, and I know that people have told us that they feel this in their bodies, conflicted between the two different body pulls of like, I feel pulled one way to reach out and I feel pulled the other way to withdraw. I remember feeling that. I remember a heaviness in my face. It's just tears just wanted to come. So that was good to register. And I registered, this does not feel good. I also registered, and I need to say something about this because this is not okay. And I also registered, I don't know how to say that thing right now. I don't know what it is I need to say because I recognize I'm getting triggered by old patterns and treated a certain way by people from my past. And I felt like, this pull of I need to do something and no, I'm not going to do anything. And I noticed the concern in me that thought, if I allow myself to fully talk about what's wrong with this person from this energy, it is going to not go well. And what I mean by that is I would have perhaps either gone into blame of the other person or shame. And I think that would have been bigger. Shame for myself of feeling this way, of what's wrong with me for making such a big deal out of nothing. Or some yucky mix of the two that you just can't even get clear what you're trying to say to the person. Yeah. And I remember I just thought, I need support in this moment. I am not meant in this moment to figure it out myself. And it would be good. I knew enough to know it would be good to try to get some more clarity and calm regulation around this before I talk to the person.
Yeah. So
So that's all.
we're in like the prequel right now, because you're
Yes.
describing the time where the thing was happening and you're noticing all the stuff that came up in your mind and a need for support while that's happening. You did all those wonderful things. You reported your mind to me. You expressed all of these conflicting thoughts and feelings.
Oh, I haven't even called you yet.
Oh, you have amazing. Well, we'll skip ahead to you've called me. You've aired all this stuff out.
Bawled my eyes out.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. You expressed all the fears and all the stuff that came up and everything that you made all of this mean, which is
Mm-hmm.
a wonderful series of steps that we should always honor. But then we come to the point, and I'm talking about the point like a few minutes before you know you're preparing to address the
Yeah.
situation with the person.
Yes. So I know body wise, I know enough now. I don't think, if you asked me 10 years ago, probably in hindsight, I could have told you, yes, I get that my body was going through something, but I don't know that I would have recognized it and spoken about it in the moment in real time. But at that point, I noticed my body does not feel here. It does not feel sturdy. My body is running the show right now was the experience I had.
Right.
And so from there, I knew I needed to settle. So
Wait, Gigi, that's so important. Your body is running the show. Like our bodies are always running the show. And when you can be in your body while that's happening, what a powerful place to be. Our tendency is to shoot up into our head and to engage the meaning maker instead of just being in that energy when in fact our body is running the show. So engage your meaning maker all you want. Your body will still be running the show, which is why it's so important for us to practice these things so that we can engage our body while it's happening eventually.
Yeah. Because at that point, I already knew, the stories my mind was making. I knew that I didn't want to approach the conversation from that storied place. But had I not taken care of my body before I started that conversation, like I just would have been hijacked really fast, right into like my fight or flight being the one who was having the conversation. So I don't know exactly what I did, but I can just, reliving this now moment to moment, I can share what I probably would have done. Things that I would find helpful. Things that if I were to come into the similar situation again, I'd probably revisit some of these practices because I know that they're helpful for me. So one is the hold. So right now I'm just sitting, I'm placing my right hand under my left arm. And my left hand is just on my right arm. Some people like to have their left hand on the shoulder. I like to have it on my arm. And it's sort of like giving yourself a hug here, a hold. And I probably would have just settled in this a little bit and thought, it's okay that my body is feeling on fire right now. And I probably would have said to myself, it's okay to feel what you're feeling. And right now I'm like squeezing my right arm. So you can notice whether giving it a squeeze feels good or just placing it gently there. But eventually I probably would have gone to alternating tapping with my hands in this position. So it's really just lifting the fingers up on each hand. And I just alternate from side to side. And if you're watching right now, you can notice I sort of just naturally started rocking a little bit. That brings me comfort. So I probably sat in something like this for a little bit. It's okay. You're about to have a hard conversation or what feels hard to you. How you feel makes sense, right? And it's okay. This is the thought that I think I really needed. It's okay to take your time to get your body ready first. Because before I would have felt such an urgency of like, I know what's wrong. I got to say something. And here I am learning to help myself slow down a little bit. I probably would have also, this is one of my favorites, and this is what it's about. It's about practicing and trying different practices that support you in your nervous system regulation to start knowing what are your go-tos, what are some of your favorites. So I would have known after this hold I probably would have wanted to lay down on the floor and have my legs up on the couch, rested on like sort of that 90-degree angle. And then I would probably be placing my hands on my body somewhere, probably on the front chest. And just being with breath. There's something really comforting for me to feel the sturdiness of the floor underneath my back, and then the warmth and the weight of my hand on the front body. That really helps my body settle in a way that nothing else can. So I'm pretty sure I did some version of those kinds of things before I picked up the phone.
Yeah. I just want to address the sort of energetic magic that's contained in what you've just described. This connection with body, this making time and space for mental silence, for spirit to appear, whatever you want to call it. By this point, we've been running the script. We've gone through all the thoughts and fears and everything that comes up. In the past, during this time when you're doing a body connection, I would have been like probably literally looking at notes, like what are all the things I need to say?
Oh yeah, it would have been like jotting down notes in my phone of like, I need to get this point across and that point across. And if they have any pushback on that, then I'm going to use this example and that past thing.
Right? Yeah. And what I've come to trust much more than that now, or perhaps in combination with that, is that when I take the time to settle and connect with my body, there is a magic that occurs where what needs to be said is what emerges. And discovering that for yourself and coming to trust it, I think is a really important piece.
Yes. What needs to be said is what emerges. I really want us to feel that and notice any resistance that comes with hearing that. A great example of this is when we run groups, we facilitate groups. When we were doing them in person, you're sitting in a circle and people would share sort of one after the other. We might go from, one person to the person next to them. And when people are new to this work, ourselves included, you would watch and count how many people are before you. And you'd be preparing in your mind, instead of listening to them, you'd be preparing in your mind of what you were going to say when it was your turn. Right? And you'd have no idea what people really said. and you would feel definitely not present or calm and regulated. And then by the time it was your turn, maybe you said those things, but anyways, that's not what it's about. It's about the old practice of thinking there's a perfect script. Yeah. When over time, what happens, and we would always encourage people, we know you're doing this, and it's okay that you're doing this. We're planting the seed that, you're going to one day trust that what needs to come out will come out when it's your turn. And that in the meantime, would you be willing to just feel your butt on the floor, on the chair, maybe make some eye contact with the person who's speaking and see if you can let that land? And that sounds terrifying to a lot of people because they're like, well, then I won't know what I'm going to say when it's my turn, right? But it's such a great comparison to this situation where in the past, here I was that time laying on the floor, and it's containment in that hold, containment in the floor, and my hand holding what's happening in my body gently. And in the past, there would have been none of that body support. It would have just been, what am I going to say? How am I going to, what am I going to say? How do I prove my point? all that kind of stuff. This time, none of that is going through my head. Like, I'm not script writing in my head. What I am doing in my head, once I feel that my body is more regulated, is I'm thinking about what is my intention in, having this connection and this conversation. What kind of energy do I want to bring? What is the purpose of this conversation? And I've liked to stay connected to the purpose of, I want to help this person understand me better. Right? And it might be I also want to practice understanding the other person better, which those two intentions were never my intentions before, ever.
And that really creates the dynamic of the conversation, right? That energetic intention. What you're describing is bringing an energy of holding your emotional and physical body, and an intention of curiosity and care. That now sets the stage for the conversation, as opposed to ignoring my feelings, rushing through my words, having a set of words that I intend to use. And that's the energy of the conversation, if that's what you're bringing. It's a huge difference.
This reminds me of when I work with couples, and like, there's no shame and there's nothing wrong with being present to your intention of, I just want to make you feel bad right now. I just want to make you feel guilty. I just want to prove that I'm right. Right? Sometimes we're in that mode, and that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. I think it's much more beneficial as two people, as a couple or whatever, to just openly admit to yourself and the other person of, that's where I am right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so as I'm explaining this, of having this beautiful intention of, I want to help this person understand me and I want to understand them better. I'm not always there. We're not always there. And you're not bad or wrong if you're not there yet. But I like to ask myself, am I there? What do I need to get there? Is it important for me to get there? Is that a lost cause right now? And that's okay. So when working with couples, I'll have them sit with themselves first, facing each other, but with themselves for a moment, to reflect on, what is your intention right now? What energy are you willing and able to bring in right now? And let's just be honest with ourselves and each other about that. And if your only availability is to hear them but not say anything nice, be honest with yourself and be honest with them about that. If you are at the place where you're like, I can't even look at you, but I'm here because I love you, so I'll sit next to you. Be honest with that. I feel like people can take honesty shared in that way. When your intention, your overall intention is, I want to connect with you in a healthy way, but I'm not quite there yet, but I'm here and I can bring myself to sit next to you and show you that I care through this. That says a lot.
Yeah.
Instead of pretending that you're ready to see things through their perspective when you're still really defensive.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Anyways.
Okay, so I know, because I remember this event, that the response you received was very helpful. And what I would love is for you to explore both tracks, because there's going to be your mental, emotional, and nervous system response to a welcoming reaction from the person you're talking to, a reaction that's helpful. And there's going to be a very different physiological response to reactions that maybe are less helpful for the conversation, maybe more defended. Maybe the person ends up in a shame spiral, and then you're still trying to be connected to your body and your intention while all that's happening.
Yes. So as I shared those two tracks, there's one piece I think is important to say, which is how I mentally prepared to go into sharing, which was I'm allowed to feel what I feel and they're allowed to feel what they feel.
Huge.
And I really had to practice that, meaning they might go into a shame spiral. They might feel really defensive, right? no matter how nicely I try to say it, I don't know how it's going to be received. And I had to learn, I want to give the other person permission to feel what they feel, which in a way is also setting up my own expectations of, just because I say it with some good intention does not mean it's going to be received that way. And coupled with that, I had to learn is I want to practice giving this person time to let it sink in. Because my old self would have been like, there is no time. Why are you not responding? Why are you quiet right now? Did you not hear me? Do you not care? You obviously don't care. Right. And I would just pepper them with more and more. I'd repeat it again, whatever. And I realized that when I'm upset about something, especially a situation like this where there's been a big upset, I felt a lot of things. I've thought about it. I've called a friend. I've had a lot of time to sit and reflect and to feel my way through things, to feel ready to talk about it. But that other person, they're just hearing it for the first time. And they might need some time to have it land, process, feel, reflect, right? And then make a choice about how they want to respond to that. And my old self would not have given space for that.
Right.
And I would have not given space for that. I would have made it wrong, that they were not responsive or responding in a way that didn't feel quite good or right. So I think that piece is important to practice adding in there. So you said you want me to walk down 2 tracks.
Yeah.
One of being well received, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So as I was well received, this is what I had to practice. I had to practice, oh, this person is willing to listen. And I can see that. Yeah, I can see that because they're asking me questions. They want to hear more. They're saying, hey, it's okay that it's late. I want to hear and understand what was hard for you, what was, not nice for you. In the past, that probably wouldn't have registered. I would have been so focused on, I need to be right. This time I was like, I want to practice really hearing that and feeling how it feels in my body that someone is saying, hey, I want to hear you out. And part of it was relieving. And part of it was like, oh, okay. I guess then I'll tell you the next bit, which feels a little exciting and vulnerable at the same time. And I knew I have to make that decision of leaning in some more. You are receiving, you're open. So it means like it's my move next.
Right.
Right. And just because someone is open doesn't mean we're willing to show more and to give more and to open up more. So I had to practice that. I also had to practice, oh, I just said the thing and you said, oh, that makes sense. I get why you would feel that way. I think next time I should do it like this instead. And then I was like, well, now what? Like, I didn't say that out loud, but I thought that. I felt that in my body. Well, now what? And it came from, I'm used to everything having to be a fight.
Yeah.
That my body is actually quite confused right now because I feel like, well, don't I have to say it to you 5 more times in a nastier way each time first? Like, we can't possibly be done.
Right.
And I had to notice that fight energy, that like misplaced fight energy, because it wasn't called for in this setting, but my body was used to that programming.
Yeah. Or so I inversely would have flight energy in that dynamic where I'm like, oh my God, you're receiving this. You do love me. And then I just collapse in tears and like forget about what the conversation, we don't even need to have that because now I know you love me.
Yeah. Right? No, I'm not wired that way, or I wasn't wired that way. I was like, what do you mean I don't need to say more? I'm supposed to need to say more. You're supposed to fight me on it. You're supposed to imply that I'm crazy or something's wrong with me. And I'm supposed to fight you on this some more.
Yeah.
And so I just had to learn, oh, there's nothing more to say about this. Nothing more needs to be said.
Yeah. No more
It's
drama in
okay
our life.
to stop talking now, which felt very weird.
Yeah.
So, and then, letting myself enjoy that, because that is something I claim to want. So letting myself enjoy that. And then maybe one of the next pieces was allowing the rewiring to happen of, oh, it can be different.
Yeah.
Right. It can be safe to show up and tell someone what's going on. Someone does, not just think that I matter and want to understand me, but they have the capacity to.
Yeah.
Right. Or
So
they're
that
growing.
spaciousness and care leaves a bit of a void, right? That we used to fill with drama and argument and confusion. And we knew what feelings go in that void. It's like nightmare energy. And when there's none of that, it can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like empty, which you could call that an abundance of space, or you could think of it as emptiness. So it's a totally
Yeah, it's like
different.
a lack of chaos. What do you
Yes.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with this. And like, we created Priming the Body for Peace, our program to practice exactly this. And that's what it's about. Like, I claim to want peace in my relationships. And then the moment there is peace, my body's like, whoa, wait, what? Don't I need to tell you what you did was not okay again? Like, at least one more time? And like, create that lean into fight energy again?
Yeah.
But we didn't. And so after that, what I noticed, if we're talking about the after part, I think part of me felt really relieved and closer and connected. And then part of me also felt very vulnerable. Like, I just cried my eyes out to this person, helping them understand why this thing that happened between us stirred up so much old pain and grief, and that I wasn't about this person. Like, that's some big stuff to share with someone. And it's also can feel scary to walk into a conversation wanting to share hurt, not knowing how someone's going to respond. And so sometimes that aftermath is, we talk about it in our groups, like the vulnerability hangover, right? Like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. Like, do they think I'm nuts or whatever? And so again, more of that soothing the body practices to just bring some gentle holding to the parts of us that feel a little uneasy, even though it had a good outcome, right? A connected outcome, still feeling a little raw and vulnerable from like sharing in that way. And also, that was like a number of hours by the time you added that whole thing together of when it first happened to when it got resolved. It's a lot for your body to go through.
It is.
In a
Yeah.
period of time. So we want to be aware of that. We want to be gentle with ourselves even after, if you got an outcome that seems pleasant to you, your body has still gone through something big. It's gone through like all this fight or flight or freeze and come out the other side. It's important to be gentle.
It really is. So let's go a little bit back into, so you had this helpful response. So what are you doing to support your body when you receive this unexpected positive response? How do you stay in your body?
So let me rewind a little bit more, even because it's similar things that I do even before I get that response, which is while I'm talking, while I'm sharing what's hard, while we're having that conversation where we're just sharing information, trying to find clarity with each other before I'm even super clear that there's a pleasant overall response to this. I think I was probably sitting on the couch back here. I will feel my phone in my hands. I will feel my arm resting on the armrest of the couch. I will be looking around the room at objects and noticing my breath. I'll be positioning and repositioning my body during the whole conversation so it feels comfortable. Like, those are the things that are happening while this conversation's happening. I will notice, do I need to sit, stand, or lay down while I'm saying this or hearing this? I'll notice, do I need to be moving or do I need to be still? And so each part of that conversation is going to stir up something different in my body that might need something different from me in that moment in order to be with it. So if you were to like put a camera in here and like watch me go through that conversation, you probably would have seen a whole lot of different things happening in terms of my body posture and movement and stillness. And then there would be things you wouldn't necessarily see, like, oh, I'm feeling my foot on the floor, or I'm feeling my elbow, on the armrest.
Yeah.
I'm feeling my hand on my chin.
And I suspect that that's the same whether the response you're getting from the person is helpful or unhelpful.
Yes, absolutely. Because just because it's helpful doesn't always mean your body feels that it's easy to be with, right? And regardless of whether it's helpful or unhelpful, I'm not used to, my old pattern is to have no body connection through the whole thing, right? So I'm learning that, hey, this is helpful. Let's bring a lot of body presence and spatial presence to what's happening so I can really receive this experience and enjoy this experience. If it's an unhelpful, unpleasant response that I'm getting, let's bring some body awareness, spatial awareness to support myself through what feels hard right now so that I can have this conversation, so that I can bring as much clarity as I can to be able to share with the person whether I can still engage in this conversation or whether I need to take a break.
Yeah.
But I would have known none of that before.
Yeah, totally. And that's such an empowering place to be, because you're getting uncharged data from your body. You're getting a series of facts from your body. What would feel good? What might feel a little bit better or different than what you're doing? What does your body want in this moment? And that is the through line, regardless of what the response from the other person is. It doesn't matter what's happening outside of us, which we have no power over. It's just an act of noticing what's happening inside us. And that's going to be pretty steady regardless of the response.
Yes. And when I bring in the tools that help me be with my body to notice what's happening, I'm able to pause and pause for longer when I realize, I need a moment, which never really happened before. I'm able to pause and choose with intention what the next thing is that I'm going to say, which also didn't happen before. And I can pause and get more clarity about what I need. Right? I can pause and I can say things like, ooh, this feels really scary to say, and I want to tell you. But that doesn't usually come up when I'm not body connected.
Yeah.
Right? Or I can say, this feels really scary to say, and part of me wants to hide it from you. And I'm practicing, showing more of myself, so I want to say it. But I think I just need a minute. Or I think it would help me to have a reminder from you that you actually want to hear it. Right? So I'm able to ask for more of what I need and give myself more of what I need when I can essentially slow things down.
Yeah.
There was no slowness to any of these kinds of conversations in the past. If there was any slowness, it might have been because I was frozen and I don't know what to do right now. Don't know what to say, sort of checking out. feel too overwhelmed, right? But it wasn't this slowness of like, all is going to be okay. I am okay. We are okay. It will end up being okay. And right now, this feels a little challenging or charged, and that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So then after the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like there would be a bit of different content following a conversation if you've been favorably received or if you've been, defended against and attacked or whatever might be unfavorable, whatever
Oh, I
feels.
got good things to say about this. Yes. Are you wanting me to share?
Yeah, let's do a share. So if your greatest fears were realized, either that you're just so loved and good and welcome, or you're bad and wrong and horrible, and this all went really poorly.
Okay. So, lucky for this podcast episode, I've experienced both.
Hooray!
So I can walk us through what happens when I tried to share and it's not received well. And how my old self dealt with it and how I have been able to deal with it now with the skills that I've grown. So I notice trying to share what doesn't feel good and then just being blocked because they don't see it that way. And sort of being pretty surprised, actually, like shocked and surprised and hurt at that response, feeling that in the body. And then what I don't think I would have done in the past was, again, there was a moment to pause of what do I want to do with this information? What do I want to do in this moment? And I just knew based on what was happening at the time, I'm like, this person is not in a state right now to really be able to hear me and talk this through. It will actually just get worse if I try to push it right now. So let's learn to soothe at this time. Let the person sleep. And
Let them sleep.
I would not have done that in the past.
50,000 text messages for you. Good luck sleeping.
Let them sleep and try again tomorrow. And see if there's more receptivity, not even receptivity to the hard conversation, receptivity to even have a conversation. Like I knew that even. And, but that's not easy because here I am sitting with a body full of like fight energy and also just hurt energy. And it's not resolved for me tonight. And that used to be a feeling that I didn't know how to be with. I didn't know how to wait until a more helpful time, a time where both people are more resourced.
What about when somebody's like, well, of course I can have this conversation. Let's have it right now.
Then I might say, you feel that way, and I don't right now.
Yeah.
Right? I don't feel ready to have the conversation right now. Because then I'm not blaming you. I'm not saying you're wrong about yourself. I'm just saying, hey, it doesn't feel good for me right now to have that conversation, which is true. Because if you're speaking to me in that energy, it doesn't feel good for me to engage with you.
Yeah.
Right? But in the past, I would have been like, okay, let's have it.
Yeah. I've asked for it. You're saying that you're fine to have it.
Said you're ready.
It's awful, but okay. Yeah.
Because I really didn't care whether you were ready. I just wanted to like let the floodgates open, and you said you're ready, so here we go, right?
Yeah.
So, and in this instance, like I was so shaken by what happened and so hurt by what happened that like it was the middle of the night and I couldn't sleep. And I was like, okay, well, I just got to bring every tool I have and, be kind to myself, do my best to find some regulation and trust that, hey, when my body feels safe enough, it will fall into sleep, and then we'll think about this more in the morning. Like, I could tell moments where my brain wanted to go into, well, what about this and what about that? And I was like, I don't really want to work myself up more. Like, that doesn't feel good. I already don't feel good. I don't want to add extra. So, and then in the morning, tried a little. Didn't really seem like there was space for that yet. And again, okay, tell myself.
And that's a feeling that you identified how?
So actually, there's a little piece that I'm not saying here. In the morning, I think there was an extension from their side for connection, but I was in my like, don't come here phase, and I let that be okay. And that was just my body says ick. My body says, no, you can't just come and try to connect with me when the thing isn't resolved yet. But I also had barely slept and like wasn't that articulate about it. I just said no, right? And I trusted that that would resolve itself in time when both of us are more regulated. And what was that question you asked me? How did my body know that
there was not receptivity yet to have the conversation?
I think the energy that I felt, like, I know that that's a really vague description, but
that's also kind of the point, right? These are felt senses that we're talking about, and that requires self-discovery. It requires discovery over time. It requires guessing and testing and trial and data, and to not bypass those. I can imagine how quickly we bypass even what you just described as the ick. Like, I think a lot of people listening would be like, well, geez, somebody made a bid for connection and I felt ick because, I was underslept, and like, logically, I know I want to connect. I can ignore my ick and just do the thing because it's what's being asked of me right now. But I think it's very important to feel the ick and behave accordingly, because that's what's actually true, right? And recognizing body and felt sense.
Yeah, so there was a body ick. There was also like a mind piece of recognizing, I think it's 7 a.m. and neither of us have really slept. And so this is not the foundation for a helpful conversation. So in that sense, in the past, I would have been like, oh, they made a bid for connection. Fantastic. Let's go.
Yeah.
And we would just be right into it. And here I was like, okay, they made a bid for connection. I'm not ready for that kind of connection. I'm also not ready to like hash this out right now. And either are they, like at 7 a.m. after a short night of sleep. So again, it's making a choice of not right now, later. And then later did come. And like that felt like not like ick. Like it felt like ick in the sense of we have this energy between us that's like not good right now. We have some things to clear up with each other. But it felt like, okay, we're both present enough to like really turn towards each other and what's in between us right now and start connecting about that. It was a very different feeling than a couple, an hour or two before or 3 hours before. That ick feeling wasn't the same feeling. This was I just hate that we even have to do this. I hate that this happened. But not this is like totally not the right time to talk about this. A different feeling. Yeah. So my biggest lesson in someone, I think, not responding well is to not take it personally and to give it time and to not make it mean that how I feel and what I need isn't valid.
Yeah.
I think those are helpful reminders for me.
Yeah. Are there any particular body practices that you gravitate towards when you've been received in that kind of way?
One that I know for sure I do is this shoulder roll one, which is just breathing, feeling the butt or the feet on the floor, the chair, and then breathing in through the nose. I bring my shoulders up to my ears. Breathing out through the mouth, I roll my shoulders back and down. It seems simple. It is simple. It doesn't seem like it would make much of a difference. But those moments of like fight energy, it's like tense and you're hunched forward. It's very different than opening up the heart space. Right?
Yeah. Would you walk us through your like inner intention as you're making these movements? What you're trying to bring to your body?
My inner intention is often different things. Sometimes it's I want to create some spaciousness and some sense of suppleness. So movement does that for me. Sometimes it's I'm really angry and I need to push, so I might push into the wall with the palms of my hands. I might do some sounding. Like in this case, I didn't think I did because it was like the middle of the night, would have woken up a lot of people. But I might squeeze something. I mean, even squeezing your fists right now and then letting go. Right? So I can feel sometimes that I need to push. And so I just push that energy into something.
There's so many times that we do these things, but we're unconscious about them. You know, people punch the wall, people scream bloody murder. And if we're connecting the why and the what and that we're moving energy, it just makes those movements more helpful.
I think if I recall, as I was trying to sleep, because it was the middle of the night, I think I was like sort of curled up in the fetal position a bit. I was holding my hands. I was touching my head. So just different soothing things that my body experienced as soothing and reassuring helped me. And it was also like trial and data. Like I think maybe at some point, sometimes when I lay and I can't sleep and I alternate tapping on my legs, that brings some regulation. But I might have noticed that night, this isn't helping. This isn't working.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just try something and see is really my approach.
Yeah.
But the common thread is coming back to body.
Yeah. Coming back
body
to
and breath. Body, breath, touch.
Yeah.
Are big.
Soothing touch. Like at some point here, I started giving myself this sort of comforting touch that you'd give a baby. And that has been really helpful for me.
Yeah. So lots of that. Right. When we finally could have the conversation, I think there was lots of pausing. There was lots of making space for things that needed to be felt and like moved out of me. The thing is, like, my old pattern would not have known to feel it, and I wouldn't have had the capacity either. Would have felt too overwhelmed to feel it and let it pass, and then let myself say something, even if it was related to that feeling. It would have been feel, say, or feel, shut down, and say nothing.
Yeah.
So to be able to like take a moment and just feel the big wave crashing over and then reset. And we do this at the beginning of every podcast. Like we reset, meaning like we arrive, we feel our butt, we look around, we notice our breath. Like the number of times I do that. Right. And then also looking at someone in their face, in their eyes, which was very hard for me before, especially if I felt angry with them. or if I felt hurt, or if I felt like I don't want you to see me vulnerable like this, that would feel really hard. But I feel that those moments of eye contact and really seeing the other person help. What that thing you said earlier is, what needs to be said emerges.
Totally.
If I look at you and I feel what's going on with me, what needs to be said emerges. It just comes.
Yeah. And it requires a lot of rewiring to be able to feel all the things that come up when you're looking at someone, or to, instead of, I think we often say a bunch of things instead of feeling an uncomfortable feeling, but you're going to get so much further saying nothing and feeling that uncomfortable feeling for a few moments than if you said every single word that you had in your mind and your script was delivered perfectly.
Yeah. That's definitely one thing I notice. I say, in terms of quantity of words, way less now. But I think in terms of depth of the message and truth to the heart, like, I say more.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do that before.
Yeah.
Because, like, that wasn't the example I grew up with. Like, no one's speaking from a heart place. People are just launching at each other, whether it's like outwardly launching and very obvious, or passive aggressively launching. Nowhere in that is truth of the heart.
Yeah, totally. Less is more, for sure. Well, thank you, Gigi. I think there's a lot of very good, helpful stuff in there. Is there anything more you wanted to say?
Yeah, I feel like when we share something that's meaningful and vulnerable to share with someone, a lot of us just want to know that our connection is still there. It's still strong. It's still okay, even if we haven't resolved the issue itself. And I think finding a way that feels good for both people, and by good, I mean, what do you both have capacity for? As a reminder of our connection is still here. It's still important to us, right? It might not feel the best it's ever felt. It might not feel how I want it to feel yet, but we're moving in that direction. Like, I would have never valued moving in that direction before. I would have thought, like, if we're not fully resolved and good again, then this was a whole waste of time, right? And so finding a way to close that experience with each other, that conversation, even if it's not finished, in a way that reminds you both that there's care here, there's connection here. Yes, there's tension or unresolved stuff too, but that's not the only thing that's here. I think that's helpful for whether you receive a response that you feel good about, right? To close with some connection. And even if you receive a response you are not feeling great about, right? And sometimes it's, I can still muster a hug and it feels genuine. And sometimes it's really all I can do is, look at you for a moment and acknowledge we're still here in this thing. Sometimes it's, I can't look at you, but I could send you a text and say, I'm glad we started talking, right? I care about you. I want us to find resolution. That doesn't have to negate that it feels like incomplete still, or that you feel angry or hurt still. But like, it's something that I learned from the work of Dr. Gordon Neufeld, and he talks about like bridging discipline with children, when you have to tell them like, hey, something's not okay that you did, to be able to remind kids of, we are still good. We are still good. I still love you, right? We will figure this out. And that thing was not okay, but we are still good. And I think that a lot of times when things don't feel good between us and somebody else, we forget that the main thing we want to feel good about is that we're still good in connection, right? Like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still here. I still care about you. I still want us to find resolution, even though we're not there yet.
Yeah.
So that piece. Finding a way to close with the person, finding a way to close with yourself and acknowledge, like, I'm proud of myself for, when you have time to reflect, what are you proud of yourself for? How did you show up in that? Right. And then perhaps seeing if you need to share with somebody else other than that person who was, involved in that conversation for some extra support or debrief or just to move some energy.
Yeah. Oh man, I can imagine the totally fruitless debriefing of my past where it would have just been, let's resume the bitch session. Let's rehash this until life ends,
Mm-hmm.
Very different vibe.
Rehash this until life ends.
Yeah. Well, that's very helpful stuff, I'm sure, for everybody. These are ways of having conversations and expressing care that I really hope we can help bring into the mainstream with everyone else who's doing this kind of work, because it really has not been the social norm ever. And I feel like it's becoming that. And that makes me feel really good and hopeful.
Yeah, it feels really good to feel more and more skilled, more and more able to co-create something that feels healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you have a closing practice that would feel good for your bod right now.
What, I can't really do this, but I like the energy of it. What are the animals that go like this with their heads? Is that a turkey?
Oh, this is some sort of bird. Who is it? Is it a pigeon?
Maybe.
A lot of head bobbing.
Yeah. So, I had to do those things. And before I would have felt really bad, but now I don't care. My pigeon has a stiffer neck than yours.
Hi, sweet little Pidgey. Cute.
It's funny that we're doing this because this just sounds humorous and maybe a bit silly, but I have my RMT. I love him. He's great. And he always stresses to me the importance of neck mobility. That's supposed to be the part of you that moves most easily and has the most range of motion. But most of us are either stuck staring at a screen and we don't move our heads and necks in any other way, or we're stuck in fight or flight. And so head is just in one fixed posture. And so he always reminds me of the importance of moving your neck around. Your head and neck. Yeah. So I can tell him that the pigeon is inspired by him.
Yeah, this is a yoga variation called the pigeon, which is just
not that.
Neck. Not at all that. Probably also not safe to do this while you're in actual pigeon pose.
I bet you I could. I think I could. I'm going to try it next time. In pigeon, I'm going to do the pigeon head.
So aside from the silliness of this pigeon, tell me about this as a self-connection practice.
Well, for one, my main purpose of doing it is it connects me to silliness, which I can be a pretty serious person. And so I like to always practice growing the opposite muscle. And also, I never really gave myself permission to be silly because I made all sorts of stories about, you can't be silly and smart. You can't be silly and respected. So bringing in silliness, playfulness, lightness is an important practice for me. I learned a lot of that from you. And also the other reason why this is important as a practice is this is the one that just instinctively came to me immediately. which was, let's do this thing. And then there were the stories in my head that says, well, you don't even know what it's called, was one. And then the other thing was, well, maybe that's just dumb. Maybe I should think of a better one. And then it was going back to, no, this is the one that came, go with it. And so in that, I think there is, something about self-connection, about going with that first response instead of talking yourself out of it because you think it's dumb or stupid, or people will think you're dumb or stupid.
Right. I would actually suggest this as an activity to do with the person you've had a difficult conversation with.
Oh, yes,
right?
I like that.
If there's that energy and you're both connected, but it's like, oh, wow, that was heavy. That was like a hard conversation. Could we just like dance around like pigeons for a minute together?
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's great. I would do it.
Yeah, you would. And we'd feel more connected and levity and all of those good things afterward.
What sound do pigeons make? Well, I think I have a hard time making that sound. I'm gonna have to practice. No sound comes out.
Yes, important. Put that in your calendar. Pigeon practice. Important.
Sound pigeons.
Serious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Gigi. I hope that was helpful for everybody. I suspect that it was.
I hope
Some
so.
episodes I feel more excited to edit than others. I'm like, ooh, I want to hear that conversation again. And this is one of them. So thanks for that.
You're welcome. It was fun, as always.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it for this week. Please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.